March 1969. A Hollywood film set suddenly goes silent. Cameras stop rolling. 50 crew members freeze in place as a limping, one-eyed man pushes past security and storms straight toward John Wayne. He isn't an actor. He isn't a fan. And he isn't there for an autograph. He's furious, and he believes Wayne is turning his life into a joke. The man points at Wayne's costume eye patch and spits out words no one expects to hear on a movie set. He accuses Hollywood of mocking real lawmen. Men who lost eyes. Men who limped for the rest of their lives. Men who were forgotten. And for a moment, it looks like this confrontation is about to explode in front of everyone. But instead of yelling back, John Wayne does something that shocks the entire crew. Something that will completely change this movie, redefine one of the most iconic performances in film history, and lead directly to the only Oscar Wayne would ever win. And it all starts with one forgotten U.S. Marshal who refused to stay silent. The man didn't belong there. Everyone on the True Grit set could tell instantly. His walk was uneven, his left leg dragging slightly with every step. A real eye patch covered his left eye, not leathered and polished like the ones in wardrobe, but worn, creased, and faded from years of use. Pinned to his jacket was a tarnished badge most people wouldn't even recognize anymore. Security tried to stop him. He brushed past without slowing down. He wasn't confused. He wasn't lost. He was angry, the kind of anger that had been building for decades. John Wayne heard the commotion and stood up from his director's chair. He was still in costume, Rooster Cogburn's whiskey flask hanging at his side, a fake eye patch strapped across his face. When the old man stopped 10 feet away and pointed straight at him, the accusation came out sharp and raw. "You think this is funny?" The words cut through the set. Crew members turned. Tools dropped. No one moved. The man's voice rose as he spoke about drunken, one-eyed marshals being turned into entertainment. About lives reduced to punchlines. About men who bled for the badge and were left behind once the job was done. Then he said something that made the tension even worse. He introduced himself. Carl Henderson, U.S. Marshal. 32 years of service. Lost his eye in a shootout decades earlier. And once, long before Hollywood ever touched the name, they called him Rooster. That's when John Wayne realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. And it wasn't a publicity stunt. It was personal. John Wayne didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He didn't even speak right away. Instead, he studied the man in front of him. The way his weight shifted to protect the bad leg, the stiffness in his shoulders, the dull shine of a badge that had seen real use. This wasn't performance. This was damage earned the hard way. Slowly, Wayne reached up and removed his own eye patch. Not for drama. Not for the cameras. Just to see the man clearly. Their eyes locked, one real, one missing, and the noise of the set seemed to disappear. Wayne finally spoke, calm and low. He asked Carl a single question. His name. When Carl answered, the story spilled out. Decades on the job. A violent shootout in Tulsa. Doctors who said a one-eyed man couldn't serve anymore. A career that ended without applause, without ceremony, without anyone noticing he was gone. That's when Wayne made a choice no one expected. He didn't raise his voice or call for security. He didn't try to explain himself in front of 50 staring crew members. Instead, he turned and started walking away from the cameras. "Come with me," he said. Carl hesitated. Everything in him expected another dismissal. Another brush-off from someone powerful. But curiosity, and something heavier, pulled him forward. He followed Wayne toward a wardrobe trailer tucked away from the set, unsure if this was about to get worse, or finally get honest. And once the trailer door closed behind them, the anger that brought Carl there began to crack open into something far deeper. Inside the trailer, the noise of the set vanished. No cameras. No crew. Just racks of worn costumes, leather gun belts, old-style badges, and black and white photographs pinned to the walls. This wasn't a dressing room. It looked more like an archive. Wayne moved slowly, deliberately. He picked up a heavy gun belt and explained where it came from, modeled after the exact rigs used by frontier marshals in the 1800s. Then he lifted a badge from the table, identical to the ones issued out of Judge Parker's court. None of it was invented. Every detail had been researched. Carl stared at the badge, his hand trembling as he reached toward it. Wayne kept talking, not to impress him, but to explain himself. The limp, the drinking, the way Rooster carried himself like a man held together by stubbornness alone. That wasn't mockery. It was respect. A portrait of someone broken, but still standing. Carl's voice finally softened. The anger drained out, replaced by something harder to face. He wasn't just upset about a character. He was tired of being forgotten. Tired of men like him being turned into stories while the real ones faded away without thanks. Wayne listened. Then he said something that surprised Carl even more than the confrontation outside. He admitted he didn't know what that kind of erasure felt like. But he knew one thing for certain. The man he was playing wasn't a joke. And if Hollywood had failed men like Carl before, Wayne wasn't going to let it happen this time. Wayne stood there for a long moment, weighing something. Then he made a decision that would ripple through the rest of the production. He told Carl he wanted him to stay. Not as a guest. Not as a favor. As part of the film. He asked Carl to sit beside him on set. To watch every scene. To speak up whenever something felt false. If Rooster did anything a real Marshal wouldn't do, Wayne wanted to hear it, immediately. Carl was stunned. He didn't know the first thing about movies. Wayne cut him off before he could finish the sentence. He didn't need a filmmaker. He needed the truth. That's when Wayne admitted something few people ever heard him say out loud. He talked about the guilt he carried for never serving in the war. About making films centered on soldiers and lawmen because he hadn't been one himself. Getting this role right wasn't about awards or reputation. It was the least he felt he owed to the men who actually lived it. When the director pushed back, pointing out the schedule and the delays, Wayne didn't hesitate. He made it clear the Marshal was staying, even if the production fell further behind. By the time they stepped back onto the set, Carl Henderson had a chair next to John Wayne's. And for the first time in years, he wasn't being dismissed or ignored. He was being listened to. And once filming resumed, everyone could feel that something had shifted. Carl didn't say much at first. He sat quietly beside Wayne, watching every move, every take, every pause. Then came a scene where Rooster confronted a group of outlaws. The cameras stopped. Wayne walked over and asked the question that mattered most. How was it? Carl thought for a second, then told him the truth. The gun was wrong. A real Marshal didn't aim like a target shooter. There wasn't time for that. You drew fast and fired from the hip, because hesitation got you killed. He stood up and demonstrated. Despite the limp and the stiffness in his hands, the movement was smooth, practiced, automatic. Muscle memory took over. Wayne watched closely, then tried it himself. He got it wrong. Tried again. Missed it again. On the fifth attempt it finally clicked. Carl nodded. Now it looked real. As the days passed, the lessons went deeper. During a courtroom scene, Carl explained how trials actually felt. Repetitive, exhausting, designed to wear you down. Real lawmen didn't give speeches. They told the truth and lived with it. Wayne absorbed every word. When they filmed the scene again, something was different. Rooster was quieter. More certain. He didn't need approval. He knew he'd done right. Carl felt it immediately. His eye filled with tears. So did a few of the crews. No one had ever seen Wayne work like this before. Not performing, not posturing, but learning. And the most famous scene in the entire movie was still waiting. The charge scene was supposed to be the highlight. Rooster alone, for men ahead of him, open ground between them. Wayne had practiced it over and over. Technically, it worked. On camera, it looked impressive. But it didn't feel right. Between takes, Wayne sat beside Carl and said it out loud. Something was missing. It felt like a stunt, not a decision a real lawman would make. Carl watched the setup carefully, then shook his head. Real marshals didn't charge four-armed men like that. Not unless they had no other choice. Doing it for pride would be foolish. Doing it for show would get you killed. Then Carl told him about 1934. A farmhouse outside Tulsa. 3 murderers inside. A 16-year-old girl being held hostage. Backup was hours away. Waiting would have been safer. He didn't wait. Carl described walking straight toward that house. Gun drawn. yelling until his throat burned. Not to scare them, but to let them see he wasn't bluffing. He was coming in either way, and if he had to die doing it, he would. The men surrendered. Wayne stood there in silence, finally understanding. Rooster wasn't charging because he was fearless. He was charging because someone innocent was in danger. Because stopping meant failing. Carl looked at him and nodded once. Now you get it. Wayne turned toward the director and asked for one more take. Not to perform it better, but to feel it. And when the cameras rolled again, everything changed. Wayne mounted his horse again, but this time he wasn't thinking about lines or angles. He was thinking about the farmhouse. About the girl inside. About walking forward knowing there might not be a way back. The signal was given. He took the reins in his teeth, raised a gun in each hand, and charged. But it wasn't bravado anymore. His face showed it all. Fear, fury, and resolve colliding at once. When he shouted the line, it didn't sound rehearsed. It sounded raw, almost desperate, like a man who'd already accepted what might happen next. The horses thundered past the cameras. Then the director yelled cut. No one spoke. The field was completely silent. Crew members stood frozen, unsure whether they just watched a performance or something far more personal. The director finally broke the silence. That was the take. There would be no more. Wayne dismounted and walked straight to Carl. He didn't say a word. He simply placed a hand on Carl's shoulder. Carl looked at him for a long moment, then spoke softly. He said Wayne didn't look like an actor out there. He looked like a marshal. Wayne nodded. Not in agreement, in understanding. And the men on that set would tell that story for the rest of their lives. The weight of that moment wouldn't be felt right away. Filming wrapped. The set emptied. Carl Henderson went home to Arizona, back to a quiet life in a country that barely remembered him. No headlines. No recognition. Just the feeling that, for 2 weeks, someone had finally seen him for who he was. Months later, the world saw the result. At the Academy Awards, John Wayne was called to the stage for Best Actor. It was his first Oscar after decades in Hollywood. He held the statue, cracked a joke, then paused. His voice changed. He spoke about the real marshals. The men who did the job and went home. The men who gave pieces of themselves and were never thanked. In Arizona, Carl watched from a small black and white television. When Wayne spoke, Carl's eye filled with tears. He didn't need to hear his name. He knew. Wayne remembered. Weeks later, a package arrived at Carl's house. Inside was a signed photograph from the Oscars, addressed to him. Beneath it, the actual eye patch Wayne wore in the film. And a note, handwritten. Wayne told him the truth. He said he'd played the role for 2 weeks. Carl had lived it for 32 years. For the first time in decades, Carl put on an eye patch and looked at himself in the mirror. Not as a joke, not as a relic, but as a marshal again. And that was something no award could ever match. Carl Henderson passed away a few years later, quietly, without headlines. But the story didn't end with him. His grandson eventually found the photograph, the letter, the eye patch, and the real marshal's badge. Proof of a life most people never knew existed. Those items were donated to the John Wayne Museum, where they now sit beside Wayne's prop badge from True Grit, side by side. Most visitors assume Rooster Cogburn was just a character, a piece of fiction. They don't realize he was built from real men. Men who limped. Men who lost eyes. Men who carried scars long after the job was done. John Wayne didn't just play a hero in that film. He listened. And by listening, he gave a forgotten man his dignity back. Not through publicity or speeches, but through respect. Carl Henderson didn't get a parade. He didn't get a pension ceremony. But he got something just as rare. He got to see the truth honored while he was still alive. And maybe that's the real message behind this story. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do isn't to speak louder. It's to listen to the people history almost erased. So here's a question worth sitting with. What's a sacrifice you made that nobody ever remembered? Tell us below. We'll remember it together.